Off top, let's go way back to 2010. That's when Angry Birds came out, Charlie. You remember that?
Love flipping them birds.
Merry Clipsmas. Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
Welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show. I know we normally start the show with something random, but it's not completely random. We're going to do some kind of retrospective episodes on inflection points in American professional sports. And we're going back to 2010. So I wanted to get you in that frame of mind. The iPad was launched in 2010 and Chilean miners. Remember the miners?
Oh, yeah.
They got rescued in 2010.
Shout out to the miners.
Wonder what they're up to now.
Yeah, hopefully not needing rescue.
Hopefully not mining.
Okay, so yeah, we are talking inflection points, and we're starting with 2010 because it's roughly the 15-year anniversary of a sports moment that I'll remember forever, and you will too. The decision where LeBron James decided to take his talents to South Beach.
That alone is kind of an inflection point because just the saying of I'm going to take my talents to, that became a thing that still exists today, which like it seems like something that's always been around. But prior to that, people did not, when you signed your letter of intent to a college, you didn't say I was going to take my talents to Columbus, but like it became a thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a colloquialism in everyday life for everyone. But it's more than this because that decision also feels like the beginning of player empowerment as we've known it, as a term in the sports lexicon. And there's no better example of this than what's happening right now, actually, with LeBron and the Lakers 15 years later. First, we get a superstar trade with the acquisition of Luka Doncic, who didn't want out of Dallas, who didn't demand a trade, who didn't do the thing that NBA stars have been doing for the last 5 years of signing and then wanting to choose their destination once they have a contract locked in place. And now, LeBron James, his team, one of the greatest players in NBA history, or the greatest, depending on how you look at it, is locked into a situation in Los Angeles where the Lakers aren't beholden to what he wants for maybe the first time in his career. So I think this is actually the perfect time to look at the decision and everything that came out of it. Let's pull this thread and see what the decision actually caused.
Yeah, I think we have kind of started to close the chapter on this previous era of basketball, and we started going into what we've kind of called the quickie era around the second apron. But I think you're right. This is a good time to go through and tease out all the things that came of what we're calling the player empowerment era.
Yeah.
But I also kind of think that maybe it's not a new phenomenon, I guess, is what I would say. Like if you think about player empowerment, NBA players specifically have kind of always had a ton of power and exercise.
So you don't think so? You don't think that this was the beginning of player empowerment?
So it definitely wasn't the beginning of player empowerment in basketball. Like maybe it was the beginning of the era where they got more control, but like Magic Johnson famously got Paul Westhead fired. Steve Francis, who like before he even entered the NBA was like, nah, I ain't going to Vancouver.
That's an all-time draft video, by the way. If you see someone being the second pick in the draft and reacting that way, go to YouTube for that one.
Yeah, I mean, Kobe demanded a trade before, which ended up forcing the Lakers to bring in Pau Gasol. Like there are plenty of decisions, or plenty of times players like Kareem decided to force his way out of Milwaukee to Los Angeles.
1 second on that. Can you imagine something happening now, like Kobe talking into a random person's cell phone camera in a parking lot demanding a trade?
That was that. It wasn't pre-internet, but it was like when our lives went from 50% off the internet to 50% on to like it felt like everyone's life is like 75% on the internet.
And now we would think it's an AI video.
Yeah, I
almost
definitely wouldn't trust that.
Why is Kobe in a parking lot?
Yeah, get out of here. That's nonsense. And Kobe, I guess it's a version of player empowerment. Got Shaq moved, right?
Yeah.
Like him and
totally.
Yeah. So I mean, it's all kind of disparate and spread out amongst or over a long period of time. But I think it's ridiculous to say that players just got the power. What kind of happened was this player empowerment era was more about players deciding where they wanted to play, not necessarily exercising their power at home, but kind of deciding where they wanted to go, and led to like the big three eras and all that sort of stuff, and team ups, these super teams. And that feels like more of a true like definition of the era to me.
It's so funny because I want to start with this too, where like, if you look back at the decision itself, it was largely, it's sort of tepid. I mean, that's going to sound crazy to say because it's like this massive inflection point in professional basketball.
Where I was. It's one of those.
So do I.
Yeah.
I remember exactly where
were
I was.
You?
I was sitting in my parents' basement.
I forget that you're a lot younger than me.
I was wearing a Cavs LeBron jersey. Didn't burn it.
Good job. I'm glad you didn't burn it because that's important. Like I feel like the culture war that it was like a proxy culture war that unfolded after that was a whole nother thing that led to like a different way to view sports. But before we get to all that, I was on my honeymoon.
Oh,
yeah, we were in the Bahamas on my honeymoon, and I remember we were at a restaurant at the resort. It was called the One and Only. It's since been closed, and I kept looking up at the screen like, what is LeBron going to do?
I mean, it was crazy. And the thing is, like,
it's crazy that you were in your parents' basement and I was on my honeymoon.
Yeah, I mean,
fucking old.
Yeah, also, even if I had been out of college, I probably would have been in my parents' if we're being honest.
No.
But no, I mean, like, so there's so much that went into this because like it's largely tepid now. It's like NBA star waits till free agency after spending 7 years in an organization that largely failed him with the acquisitions, the way they managed the team, the coaching, the everything up to it, leaves in free agency.
Yeah.
The context around it that made it obviously crazy is the TV special. This was coming off the 2010 World Cup. ESPN was, I mean, it's a monolith still, but this is pre-Twitter and social media taking away so many clicks and views where everyone was locked into watching this thing, and he takes an hour and monopolizes it for himself. He wastes 45 minutes with the round table, comes out with Jim Gray. Jim Gray asks him the question. But also beyond that, I like contextualizing it, LeBron had to be the person that did this thing, in my opinion, because at 25 years old, he had won 2 MVPs. I think he was pretty clearly the best player alive. I know Kobe stans will disagree with that, but he had sort of taken that mantle after the 46 special in Detroit 3 years earlier. And it seemed like there was no surer thing in sports than the LeBron team being great. Not winning championships because he hadn't done it yet. But when you look back on it, was the decision itself as big a deal as how he did it?
So, yeah, I think good. Yeah, I was making sure that we need to separate the decision, the TV show, and the fact that he decided to switch teams during free agency. And it was like, obviously it was actually a trade, but it was kind of a forced trade, which is another example of LeBron's power so he could get as much of the money that was on the table for him. And the Cavs got something back. But I think you laid it out exactly. Like you gave the resume. Yeah, it was, I want to say because the way you describe it, like a superstar deciding to go play somewhere else, not a huge deal. And part of it, the reason why we think it's not a huge deal is because what we've seen take place since the decision. But he wasn't a superstar. Like there's a different level for what LeBron James was, and no player like that in their prime, in like an era when basketball is what it was, because like we could point to Kareem being a superstar, moving teams, but like
he'd missed the playoffs for a couple of years in Milwaukee before he even got moved, which is like in and of itself like wild. That someone who was maybe at that point the greatest player of all time was happening.
And so I think that's the important part, because when you frame it that way, the further we get away, it's like, no, a great player decided to do a TV show. That's what made it huge. No, like the chosen one, the guy we've been talking about for 10 years up until that point, getting to this spot and also proving out that he's better than we even thought. Like they improved by like 15, 17 games when LeBron just got on the team.
Oh yeah.
They were in the finals by like his 4th year.
Yeah.
And like this is the type of player we're talking about. Yeah. It's not just like a top of the league guy. It's not even just a guy who's like an MVP. It's like, I mean, it sounds stupid to say this now, but he's the only guy that really got compared to Jordan. Yeah. And we can't imagine Jordan switching teams.
That was part of it too. It's coming off of Larry, Magic, Jordan being one team guys. Right. It seemed like when you breathe that air as like the heir to that type of throne, that you were going to be a one team guy. And I know that's part of it. That's an antiquated notion, but I need to sit in this for 1 second, because I don't think I realized at the time, like I knew, like I was a huge LeBron fan. I was going into the Heat, but like, I don't know how this could happen again in that type of thing. A 25-year-old who was that accomplished after his first year, he'd made all NBA every single year going into his 7th season when he became this free agent. He had won 2 MVPs. Now, if this was SGA or Luka or Giannis or so-and-so at age 25, I don't even think it's close. And that's a huge part of it. I don't think that you can have this watershed moment if there's not someone who is so abnormal compared to the rest of the league that changes the culture around it. Like this is like a legit sociology experiment. We've seen consumer and player behavior change considerably because one person who was the actual like leader of this was the person who made the decision.
When we did our second apron episode, we talked a little bit about how the max salary for the star players introduced a bit of player empowerment, but we fudged it a little bit because the max salary opened the door for it, but players didn't recognize that it was something that they could do really consistently the way that they do now until, like, to your point, the sociological perspectives of this is like LeBron showed it that was a thing that could be done. And I think because it was him, because if it was someone less than him, I don't think Kevin Durant then views himself that way. And I don't think like future players view themselves that way and push their way in and out and make roster decisions and make front office and coach and training room recommendations that the teams have to respond to, all because they recognize that it's no longer a threat. Like if he can do it, everybody would be willing to do that.
So how do you think it, like off the rip of this, how do you think it changed and didn't change the league? I mean, obviously we know the big one is that players realize their own mobility and power of being able to get where they want to go.
Yeah, I think that's a really incredibly broad question. So like I can take it a bunch of different directions. I want to start with like, I think it changed fandom would be the first thing that comes to my mind because I liked LeBron James. I rooted for LeBron James, but the decision like made me a LeBron fan in a way that I hadn't been. And at that point, like I mentioned, I was in the league already. I was married. Like I wasn't like, I watched every Heat game in part because of like, and now we can get really honest about some of the things that happened back then was like, it did kind of become a proxy culture war. And me as an athlete and a union guy on top of it, and like a young black person, a young black athlete, I remember feeling like offended by the way that the Cleveland fans reacted to it. And that like just drove me deeper. And I'm sure the vast majority of people in the middle of this conversation probably had some real stake based on their feelings of it. But there was some percentage of people on either side that were just reacting to the dynamics that were created and became really entrenched fans. And like looking back on it, it feels so stupid.
Yeah.
It feels so stupid. But not to suggest that it's not real, but it just feels so stupid because it's like, no, LeBron wanted to play in Miami. This wasn't some big like social statement.
I mean, totally. But like that portended something that's happened and is like I don't know if it's an issue or a superpower for the NBA is that with the transient player movement, which is happening now of like, you know, guys playing multiple spots, great players do. People are fans across sports of players over teams.
Yeah. I mean, I think that decision did that along with like social media and all that stuff. But I think you're right. The decision kind of opened our eyes to you don't have to be on a certain team. And the point that you made about not seeing it happen in a modern era, I would say that part of that is the Cavs didn't do a good job of supporting LeBron James. And I think it was something that was being said, but most people were like, LeBron can't win the big one.
Yeah,
and I
give
think
LeBron $1, he gives you 3/4. Can't beat the Magic, can't beat the Celtics.
But I guess I'm saying that to say that part of that transaction being such a big deal sent us all into being more vigilant sports business fans and understanding that stuff. And I think that if a player was as good as LeBron right now and had the surrounding cast that he had, I think a lot more people would be like, hey, he's got to do something. Like a lot more people would be blaming the Cavs than blaming
Absolutely. And, you know, part of that is LeBron's media mafia. It would be so much more sophisticated in passing along that information. Like we would have Clutch, an agency that he owns, essentially paying for news. So can I tell you my exact reaction to this? Because I followed LeBron to the Heat and I was like, I'm rooting for the Heat. Right. Like, let's go. But I had like
I bet you voted for Obama twice too.
Would have voted for him a third time.
Burn that Cavs jersey. Stop lying.
No, but I had like a 15-minute thing where I was pacing around like a ping pong table in my parents' basement being like, how could he do this to me? How could he do this?
You probably at that point had never been to Cleveland.
Never. Still haven't. Been to Canton.
There you go.
But it was the part of it, and I think this is what upset a lot of people, where I'm going to push back on the culture war part of it a little bit, because I don't think that's for everyone, was that this guy really leaned into being the second coming, really leaned into being the chosen one. He never shied away from being a hybrid of Magic and Michael and wanting all of this on him and being the front man of the league from the point that he was 19 on. And it felt like a shortcut. it felt like because it was teaming up, like Bosch and Wade had announced their signings ahead of time, and it felt like he was so close and so clearly the best player that if you're a fan of this and you were against it, you were like, this is beneath someone to do this. And that's how it felt at the time, which is something that has changed.
Okay, good. I thought you were going to make me do this. I thought you were going to make me go through what happened with the Celtics and go through.
Well, no, you should go through what happened with the Celtics because that's a part of it. That's one of the straw men about what's happened with the decision.
Yeah, I don't think it's a straw man.
I do.
Okay, well, we can fight about that because
not fight about it. It's just explain both sides.
No, and then ultimately land on me being right.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's how the show normally goes.
All right. So, like, my point is, to your point, he leaned in on the chosen one. And not just he leaned in, we all leaned in.
Yeah, because he's so good.
Right, I know. We want to be around for the next best thing. So we wanted him to be better than Jordan. And we put the pressure on him. And we were measuring him against Jordan as soon as he walked into the league. And so, to the point that I made earlier, they were in the NBA Finals in his fourth year. And then the following year, he did not make it to the finals because the Celtics had put together a big three of their own.
He got outdueled by Pierce in that crazy game where he showed up and was incredible. The following year, he averaged damn near 40 a game against the Orlando Magic and had the highest win shares in playoff history, all before the final 2010 year when he took off his jersey and had sort of I know that this is going to peeve you, but it was a moment where he looked like he checked out in that game 6 against the Celtics.
I remember it. I'm not peeved. I remember it. I've gotten over it. I'm far enough away from it now.
You hate when I say that athletes check out.
Yeah, because they don't check out, but whatever. I mean, that's neither here nor there. The point is, I guess we can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
We can't tell him that everything is so... or you have to be LeBron, you have to live up to this Jordan thing. And then when something that happens in his era that didn't happen before.
And that is the Celtics, trading for Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen to add to Paul Pierce. They drafted Rajon Rondo, and it seemed like they microwaved a championship and won it in 2008, returned to the finals in 2010, probably would have made it in 2009 if it wasn't for Kevin Garnett's injury.
Right. And so I guess that's my point, is if we're going to be measuring LeBron in that way, the decision that was most pivotal to me was the decision of the Celtics to build that big three. Because I think, honestly, LeBron keeps going on that path, and maybe he stays in Cleveland, and maybe they start to get some better players around him, and he gets it done in a more traditional way. But what was unique, and I know that it's not completely unheard of, but all of those players were still in their prime. Tail into their prime, but all three of those players were still in their prime. They put together a big three that stopped the momentum that LeBron had built. And so I guess
it was different though, because none of those guys were LeBron. They were all in their 30s. I know Kevin Garnett had won an MVP, but we had very different feelings of Paul Pierce than we did after he won a championship. It was not wasn't the same as LeBron, Bosch, and Wade.
Right, I understand that. So how do you think LeBron makes this decision if the Celtics don't do what they did?
Yeah, I think he had decided in the 2008 Olympics that he was going to do this 2 years prior. And I think that that's been well documented that he had basically been this is not right in Cleveland. And he said he pitched Cleveland for them to come there, and they're like, now we're good.
Yeah.
But so I think this had been a 2-year plan, and maybe that happened with the trade, but that trade was around the draft in 2008.
It was a plan that included Carmelo. I guess my point is the idea that it could happen and then it actually being executed are two entirely different things. I think that there are a lot of things that happened between then that made it more likely or less likely to happen. And I think the most impactful thing was the idea that the Celtics put together their big three, and LeBron went from knocking on the door to, oh, damn, I don't have a chance.
This is so funny because you have sort of pinned me argumentatively in the argument structure that this justified LeBron's decision to go to Miami, a decision that I didn't even disagree with, but I also don't think it's a direct correlation to Boston.
Okay, fine. We can move on. We agree that I'm right as usual, but I do think that the Celtics had some impact on it. And I don't know, I guess just fundamentally we point to this as an inflection point. And I do think it was an inflection point.
Yes.
But I think that normally those inflection points have stair steps to this process. And part of it was just basketball players in general are more empowered than any other athletes in any other sports. And then I do think the other part of it was LeBron is constantly being measured against Jordan.
Yeah.
And then he saw all of a sudden, damn, there's I'm going to have to wait 3, 4, 5 more years before I can get there.
I honestly, I think it's a big 3, but I also thought it was I think you can, if you're going to link it that way, I think you can link it to the Pau Gasol trade, which was one that's been talked about a lot. It wasn't really, he wasn't shopped around the rest of the NBA. He was sort of given to the Lakers in the darkness of night in a way that people were like, there's something unseemly about this, where it only seems to happen to the Lakers. And I'm sure that's the exact peer that LeBron was comparing himself to. There was the puppets. There was him and Kobe were the Nike guys. He was better than Kobe, but Kobe was getting his 4th and 5th ring in this time. Yeah. And I'm sure he was like, this is hogwash.
And they never actually got to be in the finals. That puppet campaign never quite lived up.
Great commercials.
Yeah, it was great commercials. Those commercials better than the LeBron's?
No, those were also great.
When LeBron...
The diving board one?
Yeah, fantastic commercial.
So after LeBron, if we're gonna push this forward a little bit, would you say that so this launched the period of player movement in a pretty considerable way, and would you say that this directly led to what Durant was able to do with the Warriors? Because I know it's been talked about. He's like, I didn't expect it to be as big as a decision when people lambasted, myself included, Durant for joining the Warriors, joining a 73 win team with the back-to-back MVP in Curry. Do you think these are directly correlated, that the decision opens up the door and Durant goes to the Warriors and leaves Oklahoma City because of this?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's directly correlated to the decision, and also directly because Durant himself had that whole, was that Sports Illustrated where he did the thing about being
Players
number
Tribune.
2?
Oh, no, Sports Illustrated for that. Players Tribune was the hardest road.
The Sports Illustrated one before he got the MVP, but not before he left. But he did a whole thing about being number 2.
Yeah.
That was part of it. LeBron himself existing was part of him feeling the pressure to do something else. And then I do think that obviously, I mean, it's a point that we agree on, I'm pretty sure, is that LeBron made that decision and all the backlash came to LeBron. And I think that Kevin Durant thought that now the coast was clear.
The backlash didn't come to him. Like it wasn't just backlash.
Right.
He lost. We mocked him.
That's fair.
And then he won. And I do remember the commercial of him running through Miami with the John Legend song about like another pair of shoes, and he was like being chased by adoring fans.
Right.
And it had flipped within 2 years that LeBron had overcome being like largely reviled and had probably a bigger fan base than he ever had. It wasn't just the he took.
The funny thing is, that makes me think a crazy kind of theory is that JJ Barea was the best thing that happened to LeBron.
I've thought this before.
Okay. Because like if they go and win immediately, even though that team was not dominant, it was like
they're very good.
You know, they were very good, but there were obvious flaws in that team. They ripped through the East, but the East is rip throughable. Or was then and still is now, I guess. But
even more so now.
Yeah, it wasn't until they lost till Eric Spoelstra like helped revolutionize the way that they play basketball that's kind of led to a lot of different changes in basketball. But anyway, the point is that, I mean, it's an obvious point because you've thought of it before, but that if they had won that first final, then he probably would have had that same experience that Kevin Durant had, where it's like, you put together a super team and you really get no points or credit in your legacy, so to speak.
There's so much of it because LeBron got so much better from 2011 to 2012. Wade got considerably worse. LeBron, it wasn't a your turn, my turn. It was my team. You're riding shotgun now, right. D-Wade, type of thing that really changed it. And here's a question about this. If you were to be someone who viewed it as a shortcut, do you think losing that first finals eradicated that, where people no longer viewed it as a shortcut once, because it was almost like a bigger trial and tribulation having that momentous failure in 2011, which, by the way, we shouldn't ignore in all of this.
That's
like, that is like, it's gotten written out of LeBron's story in a lot of ways, which is largely fair because of everything that came after it. But that is the decision to the 2011 finals is crazy in retrospect, to have either the greatest or greatest basketball player of all time just melt down in front of us for 6 games.
The LeBron Last Dance documentary, it's going to be interesting to see how they treat that NBA Finals. Like, I know that there was some whitewashing of the Last Dance documentary, like from Jordan's perspective. I imagine that they'll find some other way to explain why things didn't work out in that final, other than what you're saying, because I wholly don't accept that. But obviously, I think we both agree that everything's different if they win that over Dirk. And if they were like making fun of Dirk in between games.
The coughing.
And it becomes like it becomes a shortcut.
Mhm.
It becomes these superstars who took a shortcut to the championship.
Did we overrate how much power LeBron actually had when he was in Miami? Because it became such a big story. We talked about it constantly. There's the famous story about he tried to get Eric Spoelstra fired from the Heat by walking into Pat Riley's office and being like, Pat, do you have the itch? And then itching his calf. Being like, I think you might have the itch. And Pat being like, kick rocks, Bron. And he took away his cookies a couple years later. But
I thought that was a lie.
Dwayne Wade continues to say he took away the man's cookies. But do you think that we overrated? Because it seems nothing even similar at that point. His Miami stint seems nothing similar to what happened later when he was signing 1+1s in Cleveland, 1+1s in LA, and holding a metaphorical gun to teams' heads, being like, if you don't do what I want, I'm leaving.
Yeah, I mean, did we? I guess we didn't. I don't remember discussing how much power LeBron had in Miami. I don't remember that as a storyline because I don't remember him executing any of these.
Shabazz Napier.
Oh yeah, that's right. That the Shabazz Napier, but it was a first round pick when they were late in the draft, which is normally like a throwaway for good NBA teams. I guess Mike Miller, he was like responsible for bringing in Mike Miller, right? But I mean, I don't ever really remember feeling like he was. And I guess this is probably just hindsight because I've seen what LeBron looks like after that, what real LeBron power looks like, where he does have coaches in and out and does make roster decisions or feels like he makes the roster.
He's associated with the sports agency.
Clutch management. So, yeah, I think, I guess, so was that, maybe I'm not remembering correctly. Like, was that a story that LeBron had a bunch of power?
It was the beginning of him like shadow GMing, shadow being in charge of stuff. It felt like he was orchestrating player movement in certain ways that was pretty unique at the time.
The Shabazz Napier one was hilarious.
Yeah. So, but we should now as we push this forward, the league tried to respond to this. Right. They put in actual CBA mechanisms with the Supermax, which I know it technically happened after the first one was signed in 2017 after Durant had gone to the Warriors, but it's pretty clear that they tried to incentivize players to stay with the teams that they were on by offering a considerable bump in salary to stay with that team.
Can we call that move the Carmelo? Like we have the Rose rule, like the Derrick Rose rule to get a higher contract. We got the Bird rule in order to stay with your franchise. Like the move that Carmelo pulled, can we call that move the Carmelo? Because he signed with New York and then immediately forced his way out and ended up in Oklahoma City. He got his money in his destination too.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it's crazy because it was actually the point when he sort of fell off as a superstar, which is ironic. But it's the thing that I'd question about that is the Supermax was something that was built to sort of stifle this. Right. Do you think it actually supercharged player empowerment? Because then this crescendoed with Anthony Davis, who had, correct me, 3 or 4 years left on his deal. He was seen as a potential Tim Duncan level player. It hasn't totally panned out that way, even though he's an all-time great player and an all-time defensive player. But it crescendoed with that, where someone with multiple years left on his deal, where he had signed this extension for more money to stay in New Orleans, was immediately able to force his way out to his preferred destination by sort of like swatting away suitors, saying he wouldn't play there. And that was also attached to LeBron, who brought him to LA by signing him to his agency and sort of helped orchestrate this deal. So in certain ways, do you think that move, the NBA's response to it, actually supercharged players disassociating with franchises more because they were able to leverage them to get where they wanted and all the money they wanted?
I wouldn't say it supercharged it. I think it just tested it and it failed. I think that they believed that it was going to have some power that it didn't have. Because if you believe that it was a rule that was going to fix this, is that then you're suggesting that it was a rule that was encouraging it to happen. And like, there was no rule that was encouraging it to happen. The guys were just realizing that there was no reason not to, especially as we talked about with their salaries artificially suppressed. Like we talked about in the previous episode that like Jordan was making more than 100% of his team's salary cap. It's pretty hard to execute some sort of sign and trade if that's the situation. If you're going to force it so I can make 20, 30, 33%, then what's stopping me from saying I'm going to show up, but I'll be in a bad attitude or I'll have a bad attitude? And then I tell the team that you suggest that you're going to trade me to, like, nah, I'll come there, but I won't be happy. Then you really have no recourse because the teams don't want them. No, you disagree?
No, I mean, I mean, we've seen recourse with that where we have started to see recourse where teams are like, you should honor your contract or we're going to trade you for the best deal for us. Like,
yeah, who? Like, I mean, like Dame Lillard at the end of his career. Like, we're not talking about.
I was going to say Jimmy Butler. I guess he got where he actually wanted to go. Durant got where he wanted
Jimmy
to go.
Butler 10 times. Durant like at least 3 or 4 times. Yeah. James Harden like 3 times. Like it does. And maybe it's changing now, but as a response to the Supermax, it definitely didn't.
I mean, I think Jim Harden now really hasn't gotten exactly what he wanted with this stuff. He's lost a considerable amount of money and tried to. Yes.
No, I mean, I understand the most recent with Daryl Morey, but it's hard when he's done it 3 times already. Oh, yeah. This final, like, I
mean, even the last one with Durant, like under market value. It's like, I wonder why. It's
like these are guys that are on the downslope of their career. The move that we're talking about pulling off is guys that are still in their prime.
So and I think that I really do think this is really connects back to the decision. But I'm gonna say something that I think you're gonna argue me down off of. I actually think that this was one of the big negative side effects for the NBA when players stopped honoring their contracts in a way and they're signing them. To me, that made it so much harder to be fans of teams, and it started us tracking trade requests and transactions more than basketball. And I know some people would say it's the NBA's superpower, that their offseason is super exciting. People love the social media clips and YouTube and stuff. But to me, I actually thought it was like sort of a bummer when it's like, I thought this so-and-so was going to be here for a while. They're going to build something. And then they were still forcing their way out. To me, that was when player empowerment took a turn, and there was an aspect of like, this is kind of stupid. And it's like hard. I don't want to say entitled because these guys are entitled to work wherever they want. Right. But I think it's like the way that they interacted with fan bases and franchises felt entitled.
I don't think I'm going to surprise you. I won't disagree with you on that.
Great.
Yeah. I just won't say that it's the player's fault.
So they're reacting to the incentive structure.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's the max salary, and I think it's the salary cap in general. Like, I do think that I can't disagree with you. As a fan of sports, like, I recognize that there is some benefit lost when you start like just up and moving, but also recognize that the thing is, it didn't translate, right? The interest didn't translate because there's no argument that it's interesting and exciting, all the movement, and suddenly someone demanded a trade. Where are they going to end up? Like, it's fun.
I fall for it every time.
Yeah, we all like it. But it didn't then translate to us wanting to watch our games because we didn't care as much about the teams, or we didn't know as much about the teams and the players. It's just like switching, and it's like every year you kind of felt like it was just shaking up the dice a little bit.
I actually feel like there's so much talk about regular season ratings and devaluing the regular season, and it's such a big jump to say this is connected to it, but I really do think it is. Like maybe this is me having nostalgia, but like I grew up in DC and I actually loved like the Gilbert, Caron, Antoine teams, and they were together for a handful of years, and Larry Hughes was there, and I was like, you had your guys, and you're like, I wonder how good this team is going to be. I wonder what's going to happen this year, and like so much of that's gone, and I do feel like the player movement and the player empowerment and guys not feeling like they are actually part of the franchise in certain ways has been a part of devaluing the regular season. It's not just that playoff basketball is so different. It's that team building is so different.
Yeah. And I mean, I think all of that stuff encouraged the like stuff that we talked about where you become a fan of a player and you're following a player, in which point you can like look at their stats and then tune into the playoffs. It's different than when you're following a team. And when you're following a team, you care about the players and you care about the new players. You want to learn more about those players, which is not different for I would say the majority of NBA fans, but the casual fans who want to kind of bomb in for a certain point, like they don't know the storylines, they don't know the players, all they know is, hey, somebody moved, this is a new person somewhere else. Like I imagine it'd be interesting if we talked to casual fans and tried to figure out which teams they associate players with.
Yeah.
Like some of the star players, we just did like I don't know how to determine what a casual NBA fan is, but just did a quiz, like say some names, because I would still say, if you said Durant, I would still say OKC.
Durant's the hardest one for me.
Yeah, that's why I went straight to that one. I would still say OKC. It's probably wrong because he won the championships in Golden State, but when I think of Durant, I think of that young core that they had in OKC.
I mean, LeBron's obviously Cleveland, even though he's now played 7 years in Los Angeles, which is crazy because that's as long as his longest stint in Cleveland, and he'll play an 8th year this year. Do you think that the league is better today because of player empowerment?
You keep hitting me with these broad questions.
No, let's say player movement rather than player empowerment.
Probably not. I mean, I think more than the league, I think the league in general is probably less interesting to me than like specific players or people. I think LeBron James is better off as a result of the player empowerment era, because when you are the most powerful player, you can exert a lot of influence.
It's really interesting because, like, I think you're probably right, because I think he won more and he's won in different spots, and he came back to Cleveland, and all his whole storybook part of it is incredible. And he's the only guy who's won with 3 franchises and been the MVP in all of them. But like, I do wonder, in the alternate universe, what do you think LeBron's career looks like? To me, it's like I'm in an NFL comparison this, because I think the NFL is actually an interesting like parallel track in this, because I think that the league is probably worse because the player movement, and you look at the NFL and like people are obsessed with their teams, and like they track them year to year in ways where they know the roster up and down, and so many. I mean, I know there's more player turnover in the NFL, but largely you understand a core better. I wonder if LeBron would have had like a John Elway career where we're like, he is the greatest, and he finally won a couple at the end, because it would have taken longer.
Yeah, it definitely would have taken longer. I guess my thought is he did not have a front office that had demonstrated that they had the ability to get him the help that he needed. And so I think ultimately you're right. And I guess if we're in a world where the player movement isn't as free, then what are we looking at as far as competition? Because he owned the East, but he would every year, assuming the Celtics didn't do what they did, and no one in the East ever beats him, assuming that he's the best team, him and the Cavs are the best team in the East throughout his prime, which a fair assumption.
Yeah.
Then how many times is he going to beat the Spurs? How many times is he going to beat the Durant OKC Thunder? Like, those teams, I feel like, end up dominating the era, and LeBron ends up with fewer titles and is kind of judged as someone who never quite reached the promise, despite the fact that he probably would have been the best player in the league for that stretch.
It's the craziest thing ever, because like if you were to say who's the player whose career has been affected the most by player empowerment and player movement, I actually think it's Durant over LeBron. I genuinely do, because I think that you talk about the big 3 in Boston blocking LeBron and forcing this. The big 3 in Miami, I know it was Golden State afterwards, but like that OKC team, the counterfactual of that, of what happens if there's not a Heat super team put together, like his entire like Don Quixote quest is completely different, because he wins really early.
Yeah, he does win really early. I think the feelings about Westbrook, and I guess we assume Harden would be gone either way, because that was like a financial consideration,
yeah.
or maybe they win a championship and they decide to keep James Harden.
Yeah,
and then they end up being the dynasty that defines an era of basketball.
Or they're fighting with Golden State in the West for.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kevin Durant's my guy.
Yeah, totally, but that would have been epic. Those series was epic anyway. So like, this is a crazy one to think about now that we're in counterfactual hypothetical land. Because I promise there's a close to this where we're going to find an endpoint to it. But
why? No rush.
What does it look like today if a 25-year-old LeBron James is a free agent? And this goes back to the thing where it's like, it seems impossible, because like, I think the only one that could be comparable is Wembanyama. Yeah. If in 4 years he's won a couple MVPs and he's 25 years old and it's a place where he can sign this contract. And like, we know it would be different now, because he'd probably sign for more money and then demand a trade afterwards. But like, conceptually, with the way that social media is and the way that we talk about it now, and the way that like LeBron led to Scoops culture, led to Windhorse, led to all the Woj stuff, like all this stuff comes out of the decision, and us like obsessively refreshing Twitter. Like, what does it even look like if a player of this caliber, if there's one to exist at 25 years old, this accomplished, is like, I'm going to take my free agency. I'm not taking the massive bag, and I'm looking at all these suitors, and I'm going to choose my destiny.
Well, first of all, just remembering how fun Twitter was back in those days just made me sad, because you're right. Like, the post-LeBron Twitter era in sports, like Twitter in sports is pretty fun. But I would say, I don't think it can happen. I mean, I guess because LeBron took interviews, and there's no way that anyone could keep quiet about the interviews that they were taking. I guess it's possible that you could never tell anybody what decision you are going to make. But then the first hurdle is a player as good as LeBron. We end this where we started it. Like, there can only be one every 20, 25 years. Like, it's just not something that pops up every so often. And as good as Kobe was, he wasn't at that level. I don't know who else we would talk about up there. It's like,
I mean, in theory, if Steph after the unanimous MVP if he'd been 27 and he had hit the free agent market, or if Wembanyama is already probably the best defensive player since Bill Russell. Like in 4 years from now, if he has,
I know how good Steph is.
Yeah,
but I don't think of Steph like that.
No, but I'm saying at that time when he had
where it's like a guy that is like automatically we're contenders.
He had the best offensive season since Jordan.
Right
at that point.
Yeah, and it's slightly different though. Like, I think this is a whole nother debate that we get into. I think the point is it would have to be Wemby. That's the only other person that could do anything like that. And the way that it would work out now is he would live stream it with some streamer or something, I guess. I don't know.
But I just we haven't seen something like this because it's changed team behavior so much. Like teams are spending years to open up cap space for free agents, and now they're just we don't really even understand how trades work in the second apron now because the salary matching. But like for the period that
was the birth of the expiring contract,
the expiring contracts, the matching salaries, the trade machine, all those things that were teams were not necessarily even taking, but they were taking on these assets they could get off of. If they were trying to line it up with the free agency years of LeBron, Durant, Harden, so-and-so, Durant and Kyrie, it became a whole thing about manipulating your cap space to match up with free agency where now with the machinations of the league salary cap and in the way that teams don't want to take in toxic assets to be part of the punitive apron, it seems almost impossible that this can happen again. It actually feels like something that's borderline been legislated out of the NBA.
Yeah, they figured a way to get that out. I don't know if they're gonna. I mean, there's always some knock-on effects that they end up not liking, but I don't know. I just got hung up on remembering that there was a time before I understood that expiring contracts had value. That was a crazy turn in sports culture where it was like, hey, but no, even though he's not going to play very well, his contract is big enough to eat up this space and time's up just right for free agency. It's insane.
I mean, literally, the Oklahoma City, what we think could be a mini dynasty, was almost built as being a way station for bad contracts.
Right.
We'll take your bad contract if you attach a pick to it, and then we'll hold it till it's expiring, and then trade it to someone for another pick.
Yeah, I as impressive as Sam Presti is, I have to say that I don't love it.
No,
I don't love it.
But they were.
I'm not
cornered to the point to have to do it.
I'm not knocking them for doing it, and I understand the dynamics that have forced people into making these decisions. I'm just saying, as a sports fan, I don't love the idea that I need to learn all these ridiculous cap maneuvers and techniques in order to then be happy with the trade. I just want, hey, we got a good player.
No,
awesome.
It's hard. The trade machine doesn't work the way it does the way it used to. If you're matching up the salaries with 10%, it's still it's incredibly difficult. Which brings me to this whole thing because you don't love it. Things have changed, and it's a real question that we've seen with Dame, we've seen with Harden stuff, we've seen with now Doncic and Davis's trade. We were seeing it with LeBron, who is the most powerful. I think he's the most powerful NBA player of my lifetime. I don't remember the Jordan stuff, and I can't even imagine that Jordan had more sway within the league than this, although maybe he did, and it's just different. But if player empowerment was a roller coaster, I don't think it's gone. It's but have we crested the top of it? Has player empowerment peaked, and we're on a spot now where teams in the league have wrestled some sort of institutional control away from the way that players had been moving for the last 15 years?
I think we have peaked, but not for the reasons you say. I think they have not wrestled a ton of institutional control, but I do think that there's a different crop of stars that didn't grow up in that era. And I think that now the way that the league, I do think that the incentives in the league are slightly different in these players, because I'm thinking of the next generation of players, and I can't think of any of them that I imagine making a big move like that. SGA, Jokic, which I guess he's a little older, but he's a guy who's, I guess Jokic and Giannis are guys who have kind of redirected this. And the guys who come after them is SGA and Wemby and guys like that.
I guess Embiid's body gave out before it could, but even Embiid stayed throughout all of it.
And we have to talk about Anthony Edwards too. It's it's not something that comes up. And these teams also are doing a better job around them.
Yeah.
So I don't imagine that it's over. I guess the desire to exercise it or the willingness to exercise the power, I think is probably over. But if somebody piss off Wemby, he could leave. There's nothing stopping him from exercising his power.
It feels different. it feels like you aren't going to be able to manipulate sweetheart deals anytime you want as the superstar. And it feels like the pool has gotten smaller. It feels like you have to be a really top of the league guy making the demand you want now to get where you want to go, because it can drum up this bidding war where it feels like lower level stars have lost some semblance of control. Even though someone like Bradley Beal gets a no trade clause, that's immediately been panned as being like, we're never doing that again.
Right.
We're never giving that control to someone who's, unless they're like a LeBron or a Jokic or that type of level talent.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if I agree, but we'll have to see it tested, because I don't know what's stopping them from doing it.
Yeah.
And because ultimately they still have a power that other athletes don't have, in that they are their own industry. And if they say like, all right, I'll be, there's such a core to a team and an organization. If they show up in a mood, it's really hard to do anything about it. If they tell the team you're going to trade them to, they're going to show up in a mood, it's really hard to do anything about it. I don't know that there's a rule that can fix that.
Yeah.
All right. Which I'm glad that you're never in a mood, which is why we always have good shows around here. Thank you, Charlie. Thanks to all the great producers. This was fun. I can't wait to do another one of these. What's the next episode going to be about?
2010 again, but it's going to be about the NFL rookie wage scale and how it got instituted.
Sam Bradford, get that money, kid. All right. Great show, Charlie. Thanks to all the great producers. I love you, Pavel. We out.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.